Now recognizes Mr. Hernandez for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. So I understand the fossil fuel industry is one of the major drivers behind the climate crisis, and that climate change in turn is intensifying natural disasters by increasing the frequency and the severity of extreme weather events. Ms. Gibson, can you speak to the role that renewables can play in bolstering community energy resilience and supporting critical local infrastructure after such disasters?
Absolutely. Renewables are more resilient, more reliable than fossils. During Winter Storm Uri and Winter Storm Elliott especially, wind produced 4 times the amount of energy than was originally anticipated. And meanwhile, fossils were completely offline, and they were providing much needed power to people in desperate times.
And, I come from Puerto Rico, and we have some of the highest electricity rates in the country, partly because we rely on imported fossil fuels for energy. How could expanding renewable energy in disaster-prone areas reduce dependence on fragile fuel supply chains that can be disrupted by storms, wildfires, or other disasters?
It would increase reliability, resilience, and quite frankly, safety and security of the communities and people.
And would you say that, utility-scale solar and battery installations are easier to scale up rapidly in response to energy crises than fossil fuel infrastructure?
It's not me that would say that. It's the evidence and the empirical data, the writings on the wall. It's faster to deploy and it's cheaper.
Right now, Puerto Rico faces a shortage of close to 800 megawatts. It's expected in the summer. And, I'll be very transparent. I'll take whatever I can find in terms of energy sources to prevent power outages in the summer. Even if tomorrow we discovered the dirtiest source of energy in the history of the world. Obviously, it doesn't have to be that way. If we had to find a temporary solution to that generation problem, could renewables be an alternative, given the ease of scaling them up quickly?
Absolutely.
Could you provide maybe more concrete examples as to how you could address a 700, 800 megawatt shortage using renewables in a very short time frame?
Well, Representative, I'm not an engineer, but I'm sure that there are people smarter than me that could provide that answer to you. But I will say that, again, it's faster and cheaper, period. That's
Okay.
what the evidence shows.
Okay. Mr. Sweetnam, I think you were nodding in disagreement. I would love to hear your opinion.
Well, you do. My recommendation would be to get a gas turbine on a barge. In other words, people who need power rapidly on the order of 800 megawatts. And you could, if you bring a gas turbine on a barge and use that, you can hook right into the grid, and that would be done. You'd use a floating regasification floating vessel, which is also easily leased. Puerto Rico, I think it's very interesting you mentioned that, because the island communities are tougher for energy, and it does make energy more expensive. The island of Kauai, if I might, committed to going to renewable energy, and so they've gotten very close with lots of solar, but it's a very small system, and it's taken up a lot of land for a small population in Kauai, but that would be an example to look at. But they did need to find a way to guarantee reliability. And so they took their existing coal plant, shut off the coal burner, and replaced it with a biogen generator. But they haven't got that up and running yet, so they're still using diesel. But that would be a way you could get dispatchable source with solar and storage. But it's a big project. And so if you want to get 800 megawatts this summer, you just need to find a barge with a generator on it and fuel it with LNG.
No, and I appreciate that. That is very helpful. That is something that we have heard and that I believe the administration is considering. And like I said, I'm more interested in solving the problem right now than necessarily in the issue of energy. Now, I have heard that the supply chains for natural gas turbines are also very backed up, and it may take years to get the necessary equipment. Do you have something to say about these challenges?
It is true that there's a backlog for new turbines for a permanent installation, and a lot of those are being purchased for artificial intelligence funding, but there are companies that rent them. So if you need 800 megawatts this summer, that's what, you're not going to be purchasing a permanent installation for that.
Right. I appreciate your responses, and thank you both. I yield back.